Hello and welcome to this Unity tutorial. Today we're going to try and replicate the spin dash effect from the Sonic games. Here I've just taken some images from Sonic Frontiers just to give us a point of reference of what we're trying to do and what it's going to look like. This is a standard Unity project. It's a URP project and it's version 2020, but any version that has shader graph on it should work fine. Just make sure you have shadergraph installed. So if you go to the package manager, search shader, and then Unity registry, and then just make sure it's installed. If not, just install it. Okay, so for this effect, there's going to be 4 elements that I want to replicate. First, I'm going to have a ball sphere shape in the middle where we're just trying to match some color properties. Light in the middle, dark around the edges, and then this glow. That's going to be one shader, an effect. The other one is going to be trying to replicate speed lines going around the sphere. That's going to be its own unique shader material. And then I want to add a distortion effect. And then finally, I want to add a particle system to try and replicate this spinning glow effect you see. So we'll start with the first one, which is just the sphere. So if we right click, create material, right click, create shader graph, and we want an unlit shader for this one, and we're just going to call it Sonic sphere. This is the shader, and we're going to rename this, call it Sonic sphere matte. Okay, perfect. And so we just go to the material, go to the shader drop down, and we just want to put the shader we just created onto it. And then we want to open up that shader. And like we said, we're just trying to get that initial glow effect. So we need the Fresnel, and we're going to need a float that's exposed. So it's internal Fresnel power. And then just pull this down, plug it into the Fresnel effect, and then plug it into the output here. And we're just going to have a quick look to show you what that looks like. We're going to need to create a new sphere, name it whatever you like. I'm going to name it Sonic Ball, apply the material to it, pull it down, and here we can see the Fresnel effect working. Now the first bit I want to do is replicate the internal white and then the darker outside. So we're going to need the inverse of this essentially. So if we go back to our shader graph, I'm going to delete the output, and we're going to just put this into a color mask. Color mask in here. No, that's not what I like. This is color. No, I'll just type mask. Color mask. This is the one I wanted. And the values I'm going to want here is 0 on the range and 1 on the fuzziness. And then from here, well, let me just put this at 0.5 so we can see the preview. So here you can see we're kind of already getting what we want, but I just want to weaken it a little bit. So I'm going to multiply by 0.1 because I don't want that strong of an effect. Now, if you're confused what a lot of these numbers are, one way to think of colors and numbers in shader graph is, especially white and black values, white is 1, black is 0. So if you were to multiply something by a black value, you'd get nothing because 0 times anything is nothing. If you multiply something by a white value, you're just going to get that color represented again. So by timesing this by 0.1, we're just toning down the whites. So if we pull this back a little, I then want to add the base color of the sphere. And so we're just going to get an exposed color again. And we'll call this internal Fresnel color. And we just plug that into the add node. And we plug that into the output. And then if we go here, we'll set up the color, just something similar to what we've got here on the ball. And then if we tone down the Fresnel to about here, what you're seeing now is you're getting the lighter center, and then you're also getting the darker outside. But obviously we still need that glow, and that can still be done in this shader. So we're just gonna go back in and create another Fresnel effect. This one's going to need its own exposed float. Outside, or I guess external, Fresnel, power. And these variables can be named whatever you like. It's just for your reference, really. And we'll say 2 on this. And then again, I'm going to want to put it into a color mask again. And the color mask node is just taking whatever's black, whatever the mask color is, and then just filtering that. So here I want the range to be 0.9. I want the fuzziness to be, I guess, a 0.1, 0.2, something like that. But you'll see the problem here is the blacks on the outside and the whites on the inside. We don't want the white value on the inside because we're wanting an external glow. So we just put this through a 1- node that inverts those colors. And then I'm going to want to multiply this by the color of the glow. So that's external, Fresnel, color. And we pull this into our graph, multiply that, and just to show you, it might show up in the preview. So if I just set it to that color, we can see it's there. And we don't want to multiply these nodes, we want to add them together. So the 2 colors are being added like such, and we put it into the output. One important thing to do is make sure this color here, the external Fresnel color, is set to HDR, and that way it's going to glow. So if we come here, we're just going to want to adjust the color here so it's what we want. So maybe a blue like this, and we're going to want to give it some intensity so it glows. So 3, it starts glowing, looks quite good. You can play with these colors to get the blue value you're looking for. I think mostly this looks pretty good. And then I might just switch the blue here, make it a little lighter, and that should look good. Now, if on your project the glow effect isn't happening, you do need post-processing for that. And the most common way to do that, I'll just delete what I've set up already. So if your project looks like this, what you need to do is create an empty object. You can call it post-processing. You add a component to it, and that's just a volume node. Set it to global, create a new profile, add an override, and we want to add bloom. So this is a pretty common way people will add a glow effect to most of their objects by using a HDR color on them and then adding bloom in post-processing. There's a few things you need to be careful of though. If I set the intensity high, you'll notice the sky's also glowing. That's because we haven't set a threshold. If we set it to 2, because the standard sky in Unity, the skybox, it has a HDR color in it, it will glow. So you just need the threshold high enough to stop that happening. I think a good intensity is like 4 for this. Depending on your game, depending on the project, you might want to set it a little differently. Another thing you'll need to make sure that you do is go to your camera, click post-processing, and that way it will appear in camera as well as in the editor. So we go back to the object. That's the first shader. We've vaguely got what we're looking for, and you can definitely play with certain values to try and match it. If you think the internal light's not bright enough, for example, you could go in, instead of multiplying by 0.1, we could go to multiples of 0.2, makes it a bit more stronger. And that's the first shader. And for the second part of this effect, what we want to be doing is trying to create the kind of like speed lines you would see on the ball as it's rotating. So to create that effect, we're going to need to create a texture. I made one earlier in Photoshop, and I'm just going to show you how I did that. So I'm just going to pull up a blank, I think this is 512 by 512 this, and I'm going to change the background to black, add a new layer, and then we're just going to draw some lines across it, just using the brush tool very roughly. Just going to draw a bunch of lines. And it's not too important how I do these because we're going to filter them out very quickly. So I'm just going to do this, go to filter, and then we're going to go to blur, motion blur, and we're going to do on 0 degrees, quite a lot of blur. And we just want something roughly like this. And then I'm also going to filter blur, motion blur in the 90-degree angle and much less power, just a very light blur like this. Something like this looks good potentially. One thing to take note of here is there's going to be a seam. If this is rotating around a sphere in our shader, there's going to be a seam from here to here. You can see this by going to filter, other, offset, and just offsetting it about 200 pixels to the left and right. So something we can do here is we can just take the blur tool, no, sorry, not the blur tool, the smudge tool, and just horizontally just trying to smudge out that seam. You can take your time with this, you can really try and make it look good. The seam actually doesn't look too bad in this, except for at the bottom. Yeah, I think I'm mostly happy with that. It doesn't look great down here, but yeah, normally when you do this, you'll get like a big seam along the line. It just depends how blurred it is. But let's just export this, export as the PNG, and then we'll just call this Sonic Motion Blur. I'll call it Motion Blur 2, just because I have some files already saved. And then we'll just go back into the Unity project. And let me find that file in my folders. There we go, Motion Blur 2. And cool. Now let's create a new material. And we're going to create the shader also for this. So this is Sonic Speed Lines. And that's the material. Create a shader. Where are we? Here we go. And I think an unlit shader would just do fine. Sonic Speed Lines Shader. And that's just going to need to be assigned here. So we go to the shader graphs, Sonic Speed Line Shader, and we're just going to create a new 3D object sphere and call this Sonic Speed Lines. You can child this to the original ball we made. We want to zero it, zero it, zero it in the position, and that way it's on the exact same position. And then I'm just going to make it a slightly bit larger than the original one. So 0.5 larger in all the axes. And then if we just open up the shader, reload, cool. We don't want it to be opaque, we want it to be transparent. We want it to be an additive blend. So if you don't know what blend is, basically it's how it's using the alpha channel. You can think of, for example, if you were putting black into something that's additive, black has a value of 0, so you're adding 0. If you're putting black into something that's multiplying, it's multiplying by 0, therefore it's removing the color. But additive will work for the texture we've created. Now, the first thing we need is a time node, and we also need a float that's exposed. We'll call this speed, maybe set to something like 3, but that can be changed at any point. And we're just multiplying these two nodes together. Now, what a time node will do is as time progresses, it'll go up in a value. And then that way we can use it to offset a texture. So if we just pull these all the way back, close down that time node and create a tiling and offset node. Okay. There we go. We just need to put this in a vector 2. I think we want to move in the x direction, but not the y. So we're just offsetting here. And as you can see, the vector 2 is 0 here. And then this is going to go into a texture sample. And we're just going to need to make a texture variable as well here. There it is. We call this main text. Pull it out, plug it in. And if we plug this into the base color, it's going to work as is. So we've applied the shader, have we? No. So we've applied the shader, and then we need to put the texture on. So this is the texture we've done. So perfect. I do think we need to do the alpha as well. So what I'll do here is I'll pull this. I'll pull all the colors and we'll just create a color mask. We're pulling the black values out, and then I think I want a range of 1 and 1. And I'm just going to plug this into the alpha, save this. Yeah, I think that's preferable. And we've kind of just created the speed lines there. That's the one I made earlier. You can use whatever texture you like here. You can play around with the texture till you get exactly what you want. So I just need to also, I'm going to rotate this along the y-axis, is it? 90? No. I'm going to rotate it along the z by 90. Minus 90. There we go. So it's just rolling forward. Another thing I forgot to do is for this mesh, I'm going to turn off the cast shadows here, and on the sonic ball, cast shadows, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're not casting a shadow there. It's up to you. In fact, I think I want a shadow on one of them, but there we go. And we've kind of got the speed line, we've kind of got the glow, so we're kind of getting there with the effect. Next, we'll be doing the third effect. Okay, so for the third effect, we're going to want a distortion. So I'm just going to, once again, create a material. I'm going to call this distortion material. I'm also going to create a distortion shader. Let's see, and then this can also be an unlit shader. Distortion shader. Okay, and then in the material, we just want to make sure we've got the correct shader applied. Oh, I've got 2 as the same name. Let's just rename this to Sonic Distortion Shader. There we go. And we're going to apply that to the material. Where has it gone? There we go. So once again, I'm just going to create a 3D object with a sphere, call it distortion. And we're going to child this once again to the sonic ball parent. I'm going to just create a position 0, 0, 0, and I'm just going to set a value of 1.05 in its scale. It looks really messy right now because of its overlap, so I'm just going to put 1.06. Cool. And this is going to be our distortion. So if we just load up this new shader, and we're going to want a unlit, transparent. I believe we want additive here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take time, and we're going to multiply it by speed once again. So we'll go here, multiply in the A, time, and then just pull this back. And then we want this in a vector 2, like before, with 0, and then putting it in a tiling and offset node. And I'm just going to create a 0 in the X because we're going to tile as well as offset this. And I'm just going to plug this into a simple noise in the UV. And I'm just going to set this to 100. So to understand what's going on here is by setting the tiling to 0, 1, we're just kind of stretching it out as such. And then by offsetting it in the X, if we put a speed variable here, you're going to see this noise is now going across. But let's see if we slow that down a bit. Okay, cool. Now we have this noise, and we're going to want to put it into a power node just to tone it down a bit. I'm going to set the power to 3, and then I'm also going to multiply this by, I think, a very low number, 0.02, because I just want a tiny distortion effect. And then all of this is going to be taking in the screen position. So we take the screen position, we add this and this together. So we're creating a bit of noise in the screen position. The screen position node is just taking the camera position, what the camera sees, and kind of applying that as a UV. So for that to make sense, we'll put it into a scene color node, and then we just plug this in here. And then if we save this, what you see all of a sudden is this distortion effect. Now, let's see if we pull it out. You can see it will distort pretty much anything behind it because it's taking the screen position and the color in that place and then distorting it. We're getting like a white shadow there. So I think if we plug this in fact, if I set the alpha to 0.5, that might work best. Yeah, and then we're getting the distortion. And again, you can open up this shader. So a speed of 3, a speed of 0.1, even 0.05, depending what sort of distortion you want. I also think I want to rotate it 90 degrees in the Z, just because I think the way the distortion is rotating around, that will look best. And there we go. That's the third part of the shader. It's kind of added a bit of life to it. If we just turn it off, for example, right, it looks kind of bland. It doesn't look like too much emotion. You have the speed lines, you have the glow, you have the color. And again, we can just show without the speed lines. So by adding all these effects together, we've kind of got the vague idea of what the ball would look like. It's moving in motion. And again, you can play with these textures, play with the values, play with the colors, see what you want. For the last part, what we're going to be doing is we're going to try and replicate this kind of glowing trail effect that you see from the side in the game. So that'll be the fourth part of this effect. Okay, so for the fourth part, we're going to just try and replicate this glowing outside effect you see here. You mostly only see this from the side of the effect. From the front, you don't see it too much. And we're just going to have a quick go at trying to replicate that also. To me, this looks like two triangles rotating in a circular motion. So if you see like one triangle there, one triangle there, and that's something we should be able to do on Photoshop. So if we go to the polygon tool, go to free sides, and that's going to give us a triangle. I'm just going to make sure it's straight. Yeah, that's good enough. And then I'm just going to set its size to like 250 by 250. Cool. And I'm going to try and center this. The problem with this tool, if you try and center it, it's not going to center all that well. and that's quite important. So I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm going to right click the layer, rasterize it, and then Control-C, Control-V. Well, actually, no, duplicate layer, sure. And then rotate in the anti-clockwise direction, I believe it was. Scale it down a little. And again, I'm just going to eyeball this. If you're trying to do this perfectly, you'd measure all the triangles, try and get the angle just right, and all the sizes, and making sure that it's centered. Apply. If we select both of these, I wanted a distort, and I wanted to twirl it. Cool. So this is giving me a preview, so we can kind of see that's a bit too much. I kind of like where it's going here, just about there. Cool. And then I might go filter, blur, box blur. That seems a bit harsh. Tone it down a little. It still might be a little harsh. Okay, and we're just going to save this or export it as a PNG and just call this Sonic 12. Save, and I'm going to go back to Unity, pull that back in. And again, with any of these images, any of these textures, again, it comes down to preference, it comes down to what you're looking to do. But these techniques are all relevant. You can use the 12 filter to make anything like this. So this is the one we just made. This is one I made earlier. I think I put a circle in the middle to kind of center it to make it look a bit better. But we'll try this one, and then if it doesn't work, we'll just do use the old texture I used. So we're just going to create an effect, a particle system. Particle system's probably the easiest way to do what I want to do here. So I'm just going to call this Sonic 12. And I'm going to create the duration can be 1. I'm going to set the lifetime to 16. The speed can be, I don't know, maybe 3. 3 might be good. We don't need a shape on this bad boy. We just need the emission to be set to 1. Just trying to check if anything isn't what I wanted. The renderer, in fact, it might make more sense to go create a new material, and we'll make the particle material first. So this would just be called the Sonic 12. And where did it go? There it is. Actually, under URP, particles, unlit. Perfect, this is what I wanted. I want a transparent particle. I want a blending mode additive. As we discussed before, if you're using black for alpha, you use additive. You can use alpha otherwise. Alpha clipping, not necessary. And we're just going to throw this in our base map. We're going to throw it in our emissions map as well. And we can set this to blue and give it some intensity. 2.5 maybe. And then I want this to be a soft particle as well. And that should all be, oh no. And then the render face, we also want that to be both. So once you've set all that up, we can then go into the particle system, throw it on, and we're getting a problem here. Is it alpha? No. Additive, render both, please. Multiply. Yeah, color mode, multiply. And then this, I just want it to be blue. Yeah, that kind of looks what we want. I don't want it to have any gravity or speed. Why is it going upwards? I actually don't want a start speed. And wow, that's bright. So we're going to just tone that down. Man, that's very emissive. Why is that so bright? I might turn the emission off here. And yeah, I don't need the emission for this at all. Okay, that's good. And then the renderer, I want to put this on a mesh. Currently it's on a billboard, so that will always face the camera. Mesh, just a simple quad mesh will do. Sort mode, none. Render alignment, all of these look good. Doesn't need to cast a shadow. Close the renderer down. What we do need is a rotation over lifetime. Separate the axes out. So click this to turn it on, separate the axes out. And I think I want a minus 45. Duration 1, 16. Start lifetime 16, duration 1. Looping, yeah, I do want it to loop. Why am I getting multiple? Emission, rate over time 1, rate over distance. Start lifetime, oh, duration 16, right? So if we stop play, no, that's not what I want. What did I not do here? Oh, max particles, of course. That's 1. Cool. Stop play. And now we've got essentially what we want. So I'm going to put the position 0, 0, 0. I should have childed it first to our Sonic ball. 0, 0, 0. It's probably too small to see right now, so we'll just say 4, 4, 4. It's a bit too big, so 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. A little small maybe. 3, 3, 3. And the renderer is still facing the camera. Right, so it's on a mesh, it's on a quad. Because as I rotate, yeah, that's not what I want. I wanted it in a singular motion. So render alignment to the world. Render alignment to the local. Nice. And yeah, perfect. So now we just need to rotate this 0. And it's going in the opposite direction of what I wanted. So if I rotate it along the Y by 180, yeah, cool. And it's a little slow on the rotation speed. So if we just say minus 90, and then start speed 3. No, that's 0. I don't want it moving in a direction, of course. Okay. And simulation speed. Okay, so we can speed it up there. So yeah, so we've kind of got, I've rotated it the wrong way. Y is 0. Is it Z that I want to rotate it in, or the X? Or is it 90, and then 90 in the Y? Or is it minus 90 in the Y? There we go. Okay, cool. So we've kind of got like a side little glow here, kind of giving us the final touch on the effect. Now this isn't a perfect replica of the Sonic Frontiers Speed Dash, but what this should show you is a bunch of tools and techniques that you can use to kind of replicate this, use it in your game. The sort of effects that, you know, rotating textures, distortions, getting a Fresnel effect on an object, all of these can be used in your game. You're probably not going to want to add Sonic Spin Dash to your game, but all these tools, all these techniques are going to be useful to kind of work in your own projects. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please feel free to comment and subscribe.